Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Brandon Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I'm thrilled, honored, and humbled to have with me my good friend, Bernie Borges. Great afternoon. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Brandon. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, Bernie. Now, the last time you and I connected, obviously we've been connecting quite a bit every week, just with our work with Van Gresso. But you know, you're a guy that's been in marketing for a while, that now does digital sales, consulting, and transformation. You know, the audience, I feel, is like dying to know, you know, who is this sales and marketing expert, this content marketing machine, this CMO, Bernie Borges. Like, you've been all over the place. You're an advisor at a lot of top companies. You were VP of communications and marketing leader at AMA and Tampa. And, you know, you were VP of biz dev at Hydrogen Media. Like, I'd love to just hear, you know, you've got quite an experience selling for even back then for Kodak. Like, I'd love to just hear, where did Bernie come from, your background in sales and the successes and failures that you've had, you know, from growing up to all the different places that you worked at. And then we're going to just dive into, at the end, you know, your top secret to sales success. So take it from the top, man. Who is Bernie Borges?
So
where'd you come from?
Brandon, I've got to take you all the way back to my late teens, early 20s, because I grew up in New York City, and I told my parents that I wanted to go to Pace University, and they just couldn't afford to pay that tuition. They said, you know, go to a public school. We can't afford to, you know, pay the tuition. So I said, I want to go there, so I'm going to pay for it. So I went into Manhattan, and I went to an employment agency and said, I'm looking for a job. And about an hour or two later, I had a job there, which is straight commission, just calling companies in Manhattan, finding job orders, then finding the candidates to fill those job orders. So for the first year, I worked at an employment agency, just filling candidates, and, you know, again, just cold calling and filling those jobs. And
wow.
Then I started.
So you had to do both the cold calling to like find the customer, and then you had to go out and find the person that would get placed.
Yeah, and I have great respect for recruiters, because they sell the one product in the world that has a beating heart and a mind of their own. And I can't tell you how many times I would actually place the perfect candidate in a position, and then they either turned it down, Brandon, or they started, and 2 weeks later or 30 days later, they quit, and I never got paid. But anyway,
brutal.
that's not the moral of the story. Is I wanted to go to Pace University because it was the school I wanted to go to. So I put myself through school. It took me 7 years at night, in my late teens through my early 20s, 12 months a year, no break. Labor Day weekend.
7 years?
7 years at night, going to school at night. Because during the day, I was in sales. I was selling full time.
Got it. So you were selling for the recruiting firm.
Well, for 1 year. And then I actually placed myself, and I went to work for a computer consulting company, and was one of the top sales.
How did you learn that? So we're going to dive into that, but like quickly, how did you? Not a lot of people have that motivation at that early age to say, dude, I'm gonna work my ass off all day, and then I'm gonna go to school all night. Like, it takes a special person. Like, is that from your family? Like, you know, where did that come from?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that question, because my dad, I lost him about 3 years ago.
Oh,
and,
wow. My prayers and condolences.
Thank you. He was in his 90s. He lived a good life. He was a very quiet and meek man. And one of the things he said to me that you know, made an impression on me at an early age was, he said, you know, you can work for the sanitation department collecting garbage, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you can also work for the sanitation department in the office as a manager, as a leader, if you get an education. The difference between the two, and no one is better than the other, but the difference is the education. So, and he didn't have the opportunity to get a formal education because he was a Cuban immigrant. He grew up from a poor family, and he just didn't have that opportunity. So he had a very, very strong work ethic, and I inherited that work ethic from him, Brandon. That's really what it comes down to.
Wow. So he just taught you, look, this is something that held me back throughout my life that we can't let hold you back.
But he never pushed it on me. He just imparted those words of wisdom to motivate me, and he was a very low key guy. He's the opposite of your personality. You've got a, electric, high energy personality. That wasn't him at all. Yeah. He just gave me those words, and it just kind of sunk in. And so as I got a little bit older in my teens and I became aware of all the opportunities in the greatest city in the world, New York, I said, Pace University is where I want to go to college. And when my parents, not surprisingly, said, we can't send you there, I said, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Oh yeah. And why, I don't know a lot about Pace. Why did you want to go to Pace so bad? Just curious.
It was a good business school.
Yeah, they've got one of the top business schools. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
it's funny. Yeah. I always wanted to live in New York when I was a kid. Because I was in advertising, and the one college I wanted to go to was NYU, and I could never get in. So not the same type of thing, but similar. So man, so your dad shows you you got to get an education, and you're just like, did you think about studying, working all day, every day for 7 years and going to school at night? At the age of, what was that? Were you 18, 19, 20 when you were doing that?
Yeah. I was.
It's super mature to think about. I don't know. I don't know a lot of mature people that could do that.
Okay. I mean, there's definitely some truth to that, Brandon, and I'll acknowledge that, and I'll take that as a compliment, but it was definitely true of me. But there was also something that my mom said that she didn't even realize that it came across that way to me. And she said, when I went to go work full time and said, I'm going to go to school at night, she said, you'll never finish. And she said it out of worry, not out of negativity.
Yeah.
She said it out of oh, I'm so worried you'll get discouraged and you'll never finish. That was the biggest motivation that I had, was to finish.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank God she said that, right?
Yeah.
Because who knows? That's interesting. Another parallel. I dealt with the same thing with my mom. My dad always pushed me to anything possible. My mom always the way that she was growing up, doubt, failure, don't do it. And my mother motivated. I used that as inspiration. No, I will do anything I want to do, and I'm going to make it happen. That's incredible. So she kind of instills that doubt, and you're no, I'm not going to let it happen. So you're year one, you do the staffing and recruiting thing, which is a really hard job, totally unscalable doing both, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Selling the recruiting and placing. I mean, a lot of staffing companies still do it, but in my opinion, I don't think that's as scalable, right? And then what happens? You get let go, or it doesn't work out?
So no. One of the companies that was a client of mine that I was filling sales positions for was a company called Jordan Inc., named after Ed Jordan. Computer consulting training company, very hot at the time. Awesome. There in New York. And I got to know what they were doing, and I said, hey, I want to sell for you guys. So about a year into the employment agency thing, I jumped over there, and I was with them for about 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah.
So almost all the way through selling for them while also going to school at night.
Yeah. Wow. Exactly.
I got my MBA at night. Dude, it's nights and weekends. I loved it because my fiance was also going to law school. But did you have a life outside of school and work, or no?
I really didn't. I mean, very little, not a whole lot. And, talk about the discipline when you're at that age and your buddies are going out drinking after work,
That age, all they do is go out and party.
Yeah. And I had to have the discipline of both going to class, and then also just, you got to manage the workload too, I have a bad habit that I need sleep between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. So I can't do
all. That's a good habit.
Yeah, well, you and I both know someone that doesn't have that habit, but we'll leave that one for another day. But my point is that I couldn't just do my homework in the middle of the night because I needed sleep, right? So I would have to be disciplined to go to class on the nights I had class, and on other nights, do the work I needed to do. Every once in a while, Brandon. I mean, I played a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Wow. So you're there, you finished school, and then I know you did new biz for Kodak, right? Was that the next big thing?
Yeah, yeah. So I went out to California, to the Bay Area, San
Awesome.
Francisco Bay Area, and I literally responded to an ad in the paper. I was one of 112 people that applied for a sales position at Eastman Kodak in their business imaging systems division, and went through a grueling interview process. And I was one of two people hired out of that 112 that they whittled down to two.
Wow.
Um, the good news was I got hired. The bad news was I was living in San Mateo at the time, and they offered me a territory in Sacramento. Now, I didn't know anything about Sacramento. And
Right.
so at first I was bummed about it, Brandon, but truth be told, I had a blast. Sacramento was actually a cool town. I made a bunch of friends there, and, I had a good time in the job. And so it was all good. And I eventually did get transferred back down to the Bay Area.
Oh, that's awesome. So you had to move from New York to like San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I elected to move with the company that I was selling for, Jordan Inc.,
Okay.
because they had an office out there. And I was one of the top sales people in New York. So when they opened up the San Francisco office, they put someone out there to open it up. And then as they were growing, they said, "Hey, Bernie, you want to go out there and continue to expand the market?" And I was young and single, Brandon, so I did one of those go west young man things on a one-way ticket,
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I went, yeah,
That's a lot of fun. No risk. I mean, people like you could take the shot, and if it doesn't work out, get
yeah,
back up and take
yeah,
another shot.
yeah,
Doesn't matter.
yeah,
Get a job, especially if you're like the workhorse like you. Where you like, hey, if it doesn't work out, I'll just get another job somewhere in the Bay
yeah.
Area.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere along the way, I was always taught, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, think about the real worst thing that can happen and work backwards from there. You know, and the worst thing that could happen was that job didn't work out, and I'd have to find another one.
Yeah, nothing bad at all.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what did you learn? Like successes and failures. So that was about 7 years, right? Jordan and Eastman Kodak in sales. So were there any big sales successes or failures that taught you like something big from those two experiences before you went on to the next thing?
I think it's something that's actually stuck with me throughout my entire career, and it's probably even more relevant today than it was in those days, because we haven't put any calendars to this, and I hope you don't do the math on my age, but that was back in the 80s, right? So what I learned was the importance of really understanding the subject matter of what you're selling,
Okay.
so that you can be credible with the prospects and the customers that you're talking to. You know, I remember even back at Jordan, we sold training courses on programming, like how to do programming using a new methodology. By the way,
Like
this was from,
C# or something, or
it was actually structured programming for COBOL.
Cobalt. No, I
All
was
right.
going to throw out
Yeah,
Cobalt.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
funny, man.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Um, and I remember talking to data processing managers. That was the ICP that we were selling to, right?
Yep.
Um, and we had to be able to talk the language. Now, the people that went in to teach these courses were like way up here on the scale of intellect and subject matter expertise, Brandon. You know what I mean? Like, I was, some 21-year-old kid,
Yep. Super
fresh out of
smart
college.
programmers or like developers or database guys, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so I just remembered that I needed to learn the lingo and the terminology and the concepts enough to speak intelligently with these data processing managers in order to earn their respect, to have sales conversations with me, to give me the permission to pitch them on these training courses that we sold. And
Yep.
we sold it to enterprises. We're talking the Wells Fargos of the world, the Chevrons of the world. We go in and we deliver these 5-day workshops, and oftentimes multiple, across a whole program. So the lesson that I learned there, Brandon, which again is even more true today, I believe, is that you've got to know what you're selling well enough to speak intelligently, to have credibility with your prospect.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So did that hurt you? Like not being like a programmer, not being a database guru, or did you just like keep studying to try to become that subject matter expert? Like how does one, and I'll give you a good example. So I was selling for IBM Interactive. After my second company, I had one big success that made millions. My second company in mobile lost millions. I was like, I'm done with entrepreneurship. I sell for IBM and Google. Dude, I didn't know it. When I went to sell for IBM and Google, I didn't know anything about web development, Google search. So it's hard to become a subject matter expert. Like, how did you do it? How does one do that?
I'm going to go old school on you, Brandon. I did it mostly by talking a lot with the SMEs, the subject matter experts, who are the people who would deliver these courses. I would take any time that I would go to them with questions. I would ask them to explain these things to me. I would sit in on, we have the company that I was with at the time did a 1 day overview. I've attended that 1 day overview a few times, and I would just become a student of it and just try to learn as much as I can. But again, I want to come back to, I would talk to the subject matter experts as much as I can and ask them whatever I needed to ask them to just understand at the level that I needed to understand for sales. And you know what? They respected me for that.
Yeah.
And
Your team that were the SMEs respected you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. Like these guys that were doing UX, UI and wireframing and development and social and mobile, like, yeah, I just would try to learn from them and copy all of like what they would say and how they would say it and then resend it to the customers and the prospects. Wow, that's incredible. Okay. So biggest thing is like meet with the subject matter experts, try to become a subject matter expert, or at least get content from them to share with your prospects so that you look like someone that's got knowledge, or a team of experts that you could share. That's a great learning. What did you do next after that? I know you went to SPC, or Software Publishing Corp, and PowerServe, and you had a decade, stint there in sales and marketing.
Yeah, so I spent about 4 years at Eastman Kodak, and that was a learning experience. It's the only big company that I've ever sold for. You mentioned that you were with IBM. So Kodak was the only big company that I was with, again, in a sales role. So I learned a lot there just because of their processes and big ticket system sales, long sales cycle, and team selling, enterprise team selling.
Yeah.
When I went to
totally different, right? I mean, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
You talk about selling, well, you tell me, but like you sold the recruiting placement and then you had to find sell the people to take the job. The enterprise sale at Kodak, was it a lot of like having to sell externally and then having to sell the team internally?
Well, my biggest memory from that is that every deal that we were in was extremely competitive against the same competitors. 3M, Canon, and Minolta. Sometimes it was just Kodak head to head against 3M, and
Wow.
and sometimes we won, sometimes we didn't win, and it was almost never win or lose on price. It was always win or lose based on use case and demonstrating the solution, to the right people who were
Like the demo.
well, more the demo was important, Brandon, but more than the demo, like the demo taking it all the way through the ROI. So we
The
had,
biz case, the ROI,
yeah.
the
So when I
value.
say my biggest learning was the team selling, it was, our responsibility in the sales roles, because we had, again, subject matter experts surrounding us. Kodak was a resource rich selling environment. So I had lots of resources to me, and that included ROI analysis tools. And so that was a big part of, you had to demonstrate the ROI to the customer so that they understood what they were buying and bought into your ROI pitch, your ROI presentation. And then you had to hope that you did it stronger than 3M or Minolta did it,
Right.
because they were doing the same thing.
And everyone's bringing that straight fire, like big ROI pitch. It's exhausting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
But when I went to SPC was a totally different world for me. Silicon Valley, Mountain View, California, Small,
Oh,
cool,
wow.
high-tech company, about 130, 40 people. They had these big parties in the parking lot with the Stanford marching band,
That's funny.
once a year to celebrate the year. I remember one year, Brandon, they had these big monster trucks and then these jalopy cars, and each jalopy car was named a competitor. And the competitors were, get this, Microsoft, Borland, and Ashton Tate. Now, depending on your background, you might only recognize Microsoft and not
Yeah,
Borland or Ashton
that's the
Tate.
only one I recognize. Yep. Wow.
Right? And so this big monstrous, those big monster cars would roll over these cars. We had somebody parachute in with our logo. That culture, right?
Damn.
Just
Where did they get all the
culture.
money to do this stuff, man?
It was the early days of the software industry.
Like
and
.coms? No, this was
Well, it
before
was
that.
pre.com.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
pre.com.
yeah. But it was, software was highly profitable like it is today, right? And it was actually sold, believe it or not. Again, I know I'm dating it, but it is what it is. It was sold in a box, with CDs.
Yeah, like the hardware.
But selling actually got easy because what we would do is we would go to a nearby city in our territory, go to a hotel, promote the fact that we were doing a seminar. 2, 3, 4, 500 people would show up and we would demonstrate the software. And then here's where it got weird. We never took any orders because they bought through resellers and through distribution. So we were measured on the data that flowed through our territory of what was called sell-through data. So we had to constantly be creating that demand, not only at the seminar level, but at the account level. So I remember spending a lot of time at Lockheed in Sunnyvale, California, creating awareness and demand and doing a lot of internal meetings with small groups of people, again, because one meeting might generate a unit order of 100 or 200 or whatever, right? So it was a very different selling environment. And it was the one time where selling was actually fun because it got a little bit easy. But then here's where it also got weird, Brandon. Okay. And I did a little bit of a left turn in my career. We in sales were frustrated with marketing because there was a disconnect between what was coming out of marketing and what we needed in the field. We needed case studies and, more user-centric content and marketing materials, and they were more about product features and packaging and merchandising and things like that.
Yeah. And it's funny because we're just starting to do that stuff right now. Like, no, we never focus on features and benefits because, like, Seamless.AI, the world's best sales leads, like selling to salespeople. No one cares about that. But it's interesting that you bring that up. Like, even back then, you needed more of the case studies and the use cases and the ROI stuff.
Yeah.
And you went from sales to marketing.
Well, that's where I'm going with this story. So we in the sales were frustrated with what was going on in what we were getting out of marketing.
You weren't getting what you needed.
Yeah, and I worked out of the Mountain View headquarters, and I'd reached a point where I was an area sales manager, reporting to the VP of sales, again, in the headquarters physical location. So I had built some relationships with some of the senior leadership, including the VP of marketing. In those days, there were no CMOs. It was a VP of marketing. And I sat down with him one day and said, "Hey, Dan, here's, what's going on." And he said, "You know what, Bernie, that's really good feedback. Why don't we organize a meeting? Let's blow this up a little bit besides one-on-one conversation. I want to get my team in here. You come even more prepared than this casual conversation." So we put a meeting together, gave him all this feedback. And you know what, Brandon, instead of them saying, "Your sales, you don't know what we're talking about. We're marketing. We're Ivy League MBAs. We know what we're talking about." It was the complete opposite. They were hungry for that input. Long story short, they said, "Hey, Bernie, we want to create a new position that you should fill, and that's director of field marketing, and you'll be the bridge between sales and product marketing." And it was completely out of left field. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't expecting it. And I took it. I thought it was, an interesting opportunity.
I've had a lot of friends that were in sales for like serial salespeople that then the company asked them to go into marketing like you because the salespeople, there's no one better in the world that knows the customer persona and their pain points and their needs and wants than the salesperson.
That's right.
And it kills me because, like, if I could turn my whole sales team into the marketing team, like, I wish I could do that here because it's so powerful. Our marketing team doesn't tap into our sales team enough. They're trying, but that's incredible. So you were like super excited for this opportunity then to take your expertise and apply it. Were you scared that you never did like you were never in a marketing role, like you're working at this big tech company? Was it scary, or was it just, no, let's roll?
Well, the irony is that my undergraduate degree was in marketing. I started grad school and I never finished
Pace,
it.
right?
At Pace University, yep.
where he worked 7 years while working full time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So with a degree in marketing, at least I came into it, with a basic, at least educational, academic understanding of marketing. And then the rest was just sort of on the job training. But understand also, Brandon, that I wasn't, thrown into a product management role or product marketing or corporate marketing. It was field marketing. I was the bridge between field sales, but it was a great learning experience because I spent a lot of time with very smart Ivy League MBA marketers that came out of Procter & Gamble. And I mean that literally, like most of them came out of Procter & Gamble.
Yeah.
Because
those guys are all super intelligent. And I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, one of our offices, and P&G is right down the street in Cincy. I mean, they hire the MBAs. Yep. They bring them into P&G. You got to have an MBA. You got to have the undergrad. You got to be the top of the top. Because I at IBM, we did a lot of the digital marketing for P&G, and we worked with all the brand marketers, and they all had MBAs. Yep. Wow.
Yep. So it was an eye-opening experience for me, and I think the biggest lesson learned that I took into the next stage of my career was always, and I can't emphasize this enough, and to this day in my role as CMO of Ingresso, marketing in B2B is about making life as easy as you can make it for sales.
I love that. Make life as easy.
That's what marketing is about
for sales.
Okay.
Wow.
And that means having the right messaging.
I was about to say, what does that mean?
Yeah, the right messaging, the right materials that are both promotional. So you've got to have branding, you've got to have demand generation, and then you also have to have an eye toward what's the number. The modern marketer, I talk about this a lot in my presentations and when I write and so forth. The modern marketer really needs to be more revenue focused than the marketer when I was in other roles, earlier in my career. It really was more about promotional marketing and merchandising and case studies and that kind of thing. But today with analytics, everything that's available to the modern marketer, it really has to be about what do we need to do to make that number and work backwards from there.
Wow. I love that. That's incredible, man. So, okay. That's a great piece of advice. And then after that, I know you did corporate marketing at PowerServe, and then did you go back into sales at Hydrogen or the VP communications at AMA? Like, get us quickly caught up to speed on the next few things that you did, and then I got to dive into what the audience is dying to learn.
So PowerServe was a software startup in the ERP world, and I started in sales because it was a startup company. And with my sales background, I wanted to join a startup company, and I said, "Hey, I'll sell, no problem." And the vision was that as we grew and matured, that I would run marketing, and it happened pretty quickly. So I was VP of marketing at PowerServe, had a team of about a dozen or so people. Most of those actually were SDRs. Back in those days, they were called inside sales, but now, SDR types. And then a couple people doing events and demand gen marketing. So basically, I ran marketing for an ERP software company. We did an IPO in the mid to late 90s. And then I joined Hydrogen, which was...
Were you there for the IPO, by the way?
I was, yeah.
So you were, wow.
That was an incredible experience.
I mean, dude, you were there for like almost 7 years at PowerServe, and you took them. How many employees when you went there? Do you remember?
I was, I think, employee number 11, if I remember correctly.
No
11 or 12.
Way, dude.
Yeah.
You joined and you're number 11, and then you take the company public.
That's why I said, I'll start in sales, because when you're that young, it's all about selling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the IPO happened, I believe, in 96.
Did you get a lot of equity when you were number 11 there, or?
I got some. I wouldn't say a lot, but I got some. So
What
it
did
was
you learn
good.
there, taking a company freaking from startup as number 11 to IPO? I mean, I don't know. I don't talk to a lot of people that get to have that experience. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't skip over this.
Okay. So the three original founders decided to bring in an outside management team.
Okay.
And full transparency on it, there were good things about it, and then there were bad things about it. The good things about it was that, hey, they were an experienced management team, right? They had that experience building and running companies at the executive level, and I don't remember if they had IPO experience themselves. The bad thing is they completely changed the culture of the company, and there were elements of it that were unhealthy. It became a little bit more what I'd call ruthless. And when you join a company in the early days, it is a little bit like a family, and then you reach a point where you're going to do the IPO, and the family thing
Yeah.
goes out the window, because it's not a family. It's like a sports team, like performance only. It's all about the number, and I get that. Business is business. I get that. But it was difficult for some. Not everybody survived. So I survived through the IPO, and then about a year after that. And
You
then I
probably
went,
got sick of it, right? I mean, because you lose the fun factor
yeah,
a little bit.
yeah. You look back on the early days, and the fun that we had building on our own, and the decisions that we were able to make with the founders as the leaders of the company, and then the lieutenants that were in charge, and I was one of them, one of several, that were helping to run the company. And then these outside leaders come in, a little brazen, a little cavalier, maybe more than a little, and just kind of doing things their way. And so, as you might imagine, Brandon, it ruffled a lot of feathers. I remember the VP of sales coming in, and within the first week, he fired someone. And he actually took me aside and he said, Bernie, I just did that to send a message that there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah, I figured. I've heard that strategy before from a few people. I don't like that strategy, but
that's what happened.
wow.
So, that's what I mean about,
What was the biggest thing that drove the success there, just quickly, like in 6 to 7 years, like for sales, what was the biggest thing that you guys did to go from 11-person startup to IPO in that 6.5 years?
You mean from a sales standpoint?
Yeah. So you joined PowerServe, number 11. What did the sales team or the group do from a sales perspective? Like, what was the number one thing that they did to have the IPO or the successful, IPO?
I think
like growth wise.
Yeah. I think it was getting enough, and come full circle to today, right? Even though that was back in the 90s, having enough conversations with qualified prospects where the product was a fit, because this product was an ERP product that only fit within certain market segments. So staying focused on those market segments and getting in the door, and then doing the demo and the use case, and the proposal and the team sell. So a lot of it was very basic stuff, but we had to be focused on the right marketplace, because I can also remember, Brandon, some mistakes of deals that we chased that were not within that market segment. And then when we didn't get them, everyone was like, gee, why didn't we get that? Well,
yeah.
Come on. It was the wrong market segment. Why did we chase it to begin with?
Stick with the ICP.
Exactly.
Damn, that's incredible. And I heard channel is a big one too. I know you leverage OEM and the reseller channel. I always ask these PEs and VCs and anyone I come across, how do we build $1 billion company? And they're like, seamless. If you could build out the channel, you can make that happen really, really fast. Do you agree with that?
It depends on the offering. So in some offerings, yes. The thing about building a channel is that you have to resource it. You can't do it. You can start it with one person, but very quickly, as it starts to get some legs and some momentum, you need to actually build a marketing team just for channels alone. And have the right communication and distribution,
sales
and support
strategy,
infrastructure, and exactly.
Okay, so bringing it full circle, you then you go into launching your own company, Find and Convert, right?
Yep.
And Vengresso, which is awesome, where you're co-founder and CMO at. And you lead a lot of the content work, you lead a lot of the marketing work, the digital transformation work. Tell us about the experience of getting out of not getting out of sales and marketing, but doing your own company.
Yeah. So I started an agency back in 2002, and initially started as a website design company.
Yeah.
That lasted all of about 9 months, give or take, because what I discovered, Brandon, is that any website that we did, and I didn't do a ton of websites in 9 months, but the few that I did, they all wanted SEO. They all assumed that SEO just happened automatically.
Yeah.
So I did a left turn and said, all right, let me focus on SEO. And SEO then just eventually took me down the path of content, because you can't have great SEO unless you're
Without
producing content.
especially nowadays, right? Back then,
Yeah.
you could, in the 2000s, you could hack a ton of shit, link building and all this hacky stuff, black hat, gray hat. Me selling for Google, I know all about like content's king today, even like anything you do, social SEO, content is king.
Yeah. So, I'll give you the fast version. Roughly 15 years, I had what I'll call a boutique content marketing agency serving B2B clients across the U.S. No one industry focus, if anything, a little bit more on the technology side of things in terms of working with tech companies and doing a lot of basic content marketing. And then it was I'm trying to remember the actual dates here. I believe it was early 2016. I get a little ping from this guy, Mario Martinez Jr. on LinkedIn. He pings me. We had already been connected. He said, hey, I got an idea that I want to run by you. We'd been connected. I was following him on YouTube. He was following my content and so on and so forth. And he said, I've got an idea I want to run by you. We jumped on a call and he explained what he wanted to do, which was to build the biggest company that really is focused on delivering digital selling, training, and consulting. And his vision was pretty simple, and that is that there's a lot of individuals that are doing it, but really no one dominant company. And he had that vision. And Mario, he's a big vision guy and a very aggressive, big thinking guy. So his vision was to build that company. And so for about the last year and a half, we've been building what we call the digital sales transformation company, focused on helping B2B companies modernize their sales teams through digital selling, training, and consulting services.
Wow, amazing, man. I just realized I was on mute. That's incredible. It comes all full circle, yeah?
Yeah. And I'm able to leverage both my marketing background and my sales background because, when I had my own agency, I didn't have a sales team. I had to go out and find the business. So I'm the CMO at Vengresso, and we're focused on, building awareness for our company and what we do and our value proposition.
Yep.
Really honing in on that ICP and reaching as many of them as we possibly can, and then delivering just the right message for them to get as many sales conversations, hand raisers to say, I want to learn more about how you can help modernize our sales team.
Perfect. Well, let's, with everything you learned, right? You've had a hell of a sales career, hell of a marketing career, from New York to San Francisco to Silicon Valley, and now you're in, I believe, my favorite state. Are you in Florida right now, or where are you at?
Yeah, I'm in the Tampa area. Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm trying to get a condo in Tampa just so I could work there in the winter with my team. I've got like 5 or 10 salespeople in Florida by Tampa, so I'm trying to get a place in Tampa or St. Pete, right around there. So I'll pick your brain. But look, the audience, sales seekers from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. If you had to go back in time to when you first started in sales, if you had to hire someone and give them one sales secret to sales success, Bernie, what is your top sales secret?
Actually, I already shared it, but I'm going to repeat it because you're asking more specifically now. And I'll use slightly different words, Brandon. It really is to make yourself an expert in the eyes of your buyer. It is so difficult to get the attention of the buyer today, more than when I was actively selling back in the 80s and 90s. Because I mean, let's be honest, right? It was pre-internet. So now with the crazy fast pace that we live in, and the fact that digital is everywhere, and the inputs that are coming to the buyer are all over the place, email, text, social, etc. When you get a precious opportunity to talk to a prospect, you have to be an expert. Okay. And now you may not be the expert as the subject matter experts that I shared with you are, but you have to convey to that buyer that you understand something about their business, something about their pain points, and something about how you can solve that. And you have to convey that in a way that is convincing. So to me, it's about communicating a level of expertise that is enough to have a credible sales conversation so that they're willing to continue that conversation through their buyer's journey and your sales process.
Wow. Yeah. So you have to become an expert in your field. Like if you had to say it in a tweet, can you repeat that again real quick?
You have to convince your buyer that you have enough expertise to solve their problem.
Got it. You have to convince your buyer that you have enough expertise to solve their problem. And I know we went over this earlier when we talked about you selling the services core, or I forget what the company name was, but where you had to work with the SMEs, Software Publishing Corp, or PowerServe, one of them. What best tip how does one do this again, just to refresh the audience's memory? Like, you're an expert at this, becoming a subject matter expert in the eyes of your buyer. You've done this, multiple times over in marketing and in sales. If I'm brand new selling for Google and I don't know shit about Google search or AdWords or any of this jazz and search engines, or I'm selling a manufacturing, or I'm selling the recruiting services, I don't know anything about HR and recruiting, how do I, as fast as possible, become a subject matter expert?
In a word, the internet. What I didn't have back in the 80s and 90s is I didn't have access to podcasts, on this thing here, which didn't even exist then, right? So
right.
I'm not only a podcaster, but I'm a podcast consumer. I also didn't have access to YouTube, where you can find just about anything on any topic. So just being a sponge. But early in our conversation, Brandon, we talked about my drive and motivation and discipline, right? You've got to have that discipline to want to educate yourself, and then the content's out there. It's just finding it and consuming it over and over again every single day.
How do you stay so motivated to be so open to learning and hungry for learning? Because someone like you could be like, well, I know everything. I already know everything.
Well, that is, boy, I don't know how many times I'm going to disagree with you, but that's one of them, Brandon, because I would never, ever say that. In fact, I'm very challenged in the current marketing environment. Marketing alone has become very specialized. Sales has become specialized as well. Oh, look at all the different roles that there are in sales. So there is so much more now in modern marketing that I'm challenged to stay on top of it. I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and on every single day, I learn something. And like you, I'm a gym rat early in the morning, and I'm listening to podcasts. And I don't think a day goes by that I'm not walking out of the gym that I didn't learn a little something in my ear that morning in a podcast.
What's some of your favorite podcasts you listen to?
So one that's kind of tactical that gets me into the weeds of marketing and social media would be the Mike Stelzner's podcast, Social Media Marketing Podcast, I think is what it's called. And then one that's more strategic is the Story Brand Podcast with Don. I'm drawing a blank on Don's last name at the moment, but the Story Brand Podcast. Those are two of my favorites. Another one is Reid Hoffman's podcast.
Yeah, Blitzscaling. Or
something scale.
Yeah. Blitzscaling. I'm excited to listen to that. We're trying to build the world's best sales leads platform. I study Reid like a
Yeah.
Like a watchdog's.
The other one that I'll mention real quickly, and also just put a plug because he does a great job, is James Carberry has a daily podcast, the B2B show, a daily podcast. And he interviews people like you and me, about what we're doing. We're practitioners. And so I learned from that as well.
Wow, that's incredible, man. Oh, I love it. So you have to become a subject matter expert in your space. You have to have the buyer believe that you're an expert in the field, in the industry, in the product, whatever it may be. If you don't have that expertise, you have to go out there and get it from podcasts, YouTube. Do you recommend reading books as well?
So I do recommend reading books. Personally, I'm more of a fan of listening to books just because I just can't find the time to sit down and read more than a page at a time. And so it's hard to get through a book when you can only read a page at a time. But I also want to add one more, Brandon, and that is I'd be remiss if I didn't call out the fact that the modern sales professional needs to have a rock solid LinkedIn profile. One of the data points that we cited in Ingresso is came out just in October 2018. And that is in the LinkedIn State of Sales 2018 report. It says that 77% of buyers are looking for people who demonstrate knowledge about their industry, and 62% of buyers are looking to an informative LinkedIn profile before they'll determine whether they'll talk to that salesperson or not. So, I was saying earlier, you've got to prove that you're an expert to your buyer. Well, that's once you have a conversation with them. But how do you get that conversation? If you don't have a LinkedIn profile that demonstrates your expertise in a very credible way, you may never even get the chance to have those conversations, or I shouldn't say ever, but much fewer of them.
Wow. I love it. Bernie Borges, you got to become an expert in your field, in your industry, in your space. He shares exactly how to do it, the top sales secret. Bernie, thank you so much for joining us on Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Where can people follow you, connect with you, and learn from you like I have?
Well, certainly I'm on LinkedIn, Bernie Borges, and certainly I'm podcasting and blogging at Vengresso with one S, Vengresso.com.
Amazing. And again, this is Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Buy a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com. That's secretsalesbook.com. And be sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast show and our YouTube. Thank you so much, Bernie, for all of the time. It was an honor to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. We release new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube to never miss an episode.